family member and viewer. Welcome to Issues at Hand with Bruno Edgard. Now, Issues at Hand is proudly brought to you by Protea Hotel Entebbe. Make your reservations and booking now if you want to enjoy a luxurious, restful experience at the shores of Lake Victoria. Thank you for joining us once again. Today we are having a wonderful discussion about the duty of an ombudsman. Yes, I know for some of us who have dealt in legal circles and in other areas of government, we have heard that word before. But what does it mean exactly, and what are the functions of an ombudsman when it comes to the Inspector General, the Inspectorate of Government? And here with me to discuss this is Mr. Kareebi Justus, who is the Acting Director Ombudsman from the Inspectorate of Government. Welcome to Issues at Hand.
Good morning, and thank you, Bruno.
You're welcome. And so let's get right into it. Everyone wants to know, and we want to understand. Remember, knowledge is power. So, what is the mandate of the Inspectorate of Government, if we shall start from there?
Okay, thank you, Bruno, and good morning once again, our viewers. The Inspectorate of Government has three mandates. The anti-corruption mandate, that's according to the Constitution. And it has also the mandate to enforce the leadership code. But also has the mandate to the ombudsman function. And that is, I think, what we are going to spend more time on. And the ombudsman function, just to speak lightly about it. This is where, the Inspector General of Government is actually the ombudsperson. So,
what does that mean exactly?
Being an ombudsperson, this is a representative, a legal representative, who is supposed to receive complaints from the members of the public, and these complaints are to do with the issues of administrative injustice, with a view that they can be received and they can be resolved. So we can say that is a representative who is, of course, legally appointed, but he also is someone who actually handles grievances. Because this word, the ombudsman, it has its origin in the Scandinavian area, and it came into being around 1809, so many years ago. But the issue is not the word, the issue is now the function that is derived out of the name. Yeah.
All right, then take us through this function of the ombudsman then, as according to the Inspectorate of Government Act.
Okay. So under the Act, Section 8, like I had hinted just a few minutes ago, is that we receive, under this function, we do receive complaints, but then they are specific, because, like I said, there are three mandates, but under one institution. So the complaints which come, they fit in those different mandates, but specifically under this, the ombudsman mandate, we are looking at complaints to do with unfair treatment. We are looking at matters to do with good governance. We are looking at issues to do with administrative injustices in public offices. We are looking at abuse of authority by those who are holding the public offices by trust. So the areas that are complained about, they largely come from, issues to do with the people who are not receiving services that are expected from specific public offices. That can even be in form of, for example, payments, entitlements or emoluments to do, for example, if you are a salary earner and then your salary is not coming, if you are a pensioner, your pension is not coming through. That is one category. Then if you are aggrieved for example, when you have participated in a recruitment process, you feel you have not been, you have been edged out unfairly, you can raise your displeasure in writing. If it is land and maybe it is being taken over for other use, but then you are not yet compensated, or the rates, or the manner in which you are being compensated, you are not contented, you can raise that. And then to those who are in public offices, like, okay, you are there by public trust, but what are you doing exactly? Is what you are doing what is expected of you? Are you taking action on matters that are under your ambit? Or you are delaying to take action, or you are not even taking action at all, or you are taking a wrong action. So it is from the public raising their areas where they are not satisfied, they're expressing their areas of dissatisfaction. But also we look at now the other side where services are supposed to be served from. So like, how are you managing the resources that have been placed under your control as a public officer? And that's why we bring in the issues of maladministration, where decisions are taken with dishonesty, inefficiently, and then as a result, the people who are expecting services, either they don't get them, or when they get them, they are not of the quality which is expected. Yeah, so generally I'm painting a picture of what this function is and how we execute it at the institution of the Inspectorate of Government.
All right, and there are a couple of things that you mentioned there when it comes to the mandate of the Ombudsman, and I mentioned things like to ensure good governance when it comes to public office. And I want you to clarify for us exactly what good governance entails, so that we can understand some of the parameters you look at in your duty whilst you're carrying out the ensurement of good governance.
Thank you, Bruno. Good governance is a concept, but I would break it down like this: that it is the process where decisions are made. We look at how decisions are arrived at. Then we move to the next level as to how those decisions are implemented, or how they actually not implemented. And we find out, okay, where, for example, if they have been arrived at, is the process fair? Because it has also its ingredients as good governance. That's why we pick accountability, for example. That's why we pick efficiency, So we check the quality or the flow of good governance using those components, okay? And then we, at the end of you can call it at the chain, the end of the chain, we should be able to determine that no, in this process, you were not transparent. There was no accountability in it. You handled this matter, but there were so many gaps. You did not follow even what is laid down as the procedures that are supposed to be followed. And by skipping them, therefore, it means it will affect the outcome. So when we are checking this, because one of the functions under the Ombudsman mandate for the institute, that we examine the practices, the practices with a view to see where are the gaps, because then there are those gaps actually that become enablers of committing corruption. And when we identify those gaps, then we say, look, they need to be, we need to make them sealed, either by reform or by making recommendation. Because when you leave them, it's like a link in a chain. It means the strength of the chain is actually going to be severely affected. So good governance is, in a sense, is this, how is the implementation of a plan or a service delivery program, how it is done, how people conduct business in public offices, because there are rules, there are regulations, and they are supposed to be adhered to, okay? So when there are breaches, that's when at times there is outcry. That's when we realize that the services that people are supposed to receive on a specific calendar time, they don't get it. Or even when one day it comes, it may not actually be worth, you know. And that can be explained that somebody has actually, you know, circumvented certain procedures for his or her own benefit. But then that would be to the detriment of the person who is expecting the service the other side. So the service doesn't come, or when it comes late. When it comes when it has. It's not the full measure that is expected. And that's where now you find incidences of you know, people trying to enrich themselves, benefiting from a process, you know, placing people in places when they're actually not qualified, if it's, for example, a recruitment process, or if it is supposed to be a delivery of a service, people are expecting, you know, this quantity, but the quantity is less, you know, in terms of grams or capacity. And this cuts across. They could be drugs, it could be a road, because a road is also a product. You see, a road can be designed poorly. You as a motorist may never know, but when it begins to peel off, begins to develop cracks, that's when you begin to say, I think it was not done well. But remember, that was done by some people at a certain early stage of design. Okay, but you as the user now, you are beginning to be inconvenienced on a road, and you shouldn't be, because if a road is done, it should be motorable, it should be wide enough, it should be convenient to use by all the road users. If the drugs are allowed to pass, but then they are of poor quality, you know, that has serious consequences to the consumers. It may actually lead to people losing their lives, or even animals, you know, because even animals also get drugs. So these are some of the expectations, but which we, as the ombudsperson, under the ombudsman mandate, we do look into. Okay, we do look into. I've just raised a few examples, but it is quite a broad, it's quite a broad spectrum.
And in terms of the practices, something interesting that I found when it comes to the duty of the ombudsman is the examining practices or methods that are conducive to corrupt practices. Could you give us an example of some of these methods that in your time and in your experience you've seen that have been conducive to corrupt practices?
Thank you, Bruno. The practices, most of them are self-engineered, but they are normally done, you know, parallel to what is expected. I'll give you just one example in one area, that is, for example, under the recruitment of public officials into public offices, and this cuts across. You find that the process, it is paperized, it is there. The stages are already stated. How to start that process and how you keep, upgrading up to the end. You know, when you say the job is there, yes, it is there. So what is the expected? What person are you looking out for? You specify it, you put it out. You put a time when people are supposed to express interest. And then when they come, they are shortlisted, they are interviewed, and then the best is supposed to carry the day. But then you find the practice now, I would call it now the irregular practice, is now that they skip one of the stages. Instead of insisting, for example, on merit. Merit means you had all that was required, even in terms of performance. And then they opt to pick somebody who's maybe number 3, if we are looking at the score sheet. And because it is within, the decision is being made by either the board or the commission that is empowered to do that, somebody, a wrong person enters to occupy a right job, okay? You find somebody is bringing an individual who even doesn't have the qualifications, The qualifications are not measuring up according to what was stated, and he's brought on board, And then you find, I'll give you, for example, the second example is, when we go to some of these public institutions, work is supposed to start at a specified time. Actually, the standing orders give us 8 and 5 as the working hours. But then don't be surprised, but it is true, that if you made abrupt, impromptu visit to some of these offices around that time at the morning, you'll find those offices some of them are not open. And when you move even later in the day, you'll find people who are supposed to be in offices, they are not there. Maybe their jackets are the one dangling behind the chairs. But then what now happens to the person who is coming to receive a service to that office? You see, he has expended money, he's traveled all the way from wherever he has come and desires to receive a service. And he comes when he is told, oh, he's around, he or she's around, but he's not around. If it's an emergency, you can see the catastrophe you're causing to this person. Both the cost, the disappointment, and it can even border on, getting somebody really out of, putting somebody in a very, very, very serious situation. So the non-adherence of the regulations which are already established and they're in place is one of the practices. If people are supposed to be on duty and they are not on duty, that's a wrong practice. But the right practice is that people are supposed to come and work. If people are supposed to be, you're supposed to be delivering goods or services, depending on your mandate. And those services, they are supposed to be in a good measure. What you are taking, you have had instances where, for example, people, when they are even carrying, they are supposed to bring, for example, seedlings. You find that, or animals, you find that the animal which was approved is not the animal which is being delivered, you see. So you find people want to twist the right to do the wrong. And that, when it's left unchecked, when there is no one who is coming to say, hey, but you are deviating. Let's check what we're supposed to bring and versus what you have brought. Then that means it becomes habitual. Then people take it to be like a norm, but there is a loser. The loser on the other side. There is somebody who is continually getting what is not supposed to be the service or the product. So those are some of the practices that I may bring about in examples that we do face or we have found that they give enablement to people ending up committing acts of corruption.
Thank you so much. And just to be clear, that the mandate covers people in public offices.
Yes, the people in public offices. And Bruno, this principle is, much as it is by law for public officers, but in fact, it's ideal also for the private sector, because in an establishment like any business, for example, which is run privately, it's supposed to be somebody who is supposed to receive complaints, because the workforce, we find some institutions actually have even more people than the staff of the Inspectorate of Government. So the question is, when they have grievances, dissatisfactions about the way things are done at the institution, where do they
Who
go?
do they run to?
Yes.
Exactly.
So even as we are in this studio, this can be borrowed, can be taken up by any establishment, any entity. You see, you will not be breaching any law to have an ombudsman at the family TV. People bring in their problems and then they are resolved. Because the underlying thing is that it should be swift. The ombudsman nature of complaints should be done quickly, because they do affect, they are going to the individual the individual rights, the rights of an individual. If Bruno, I'm talking about your salary. If you don't get a salary, the people behind you are going to starve. Okay, that's not desirable at all. If a pensioner doesn't get a pension, remember, a pensioner is somebody who has left his work. Now, the dependence on that pension, the dependents on that pension are quite many. In the background, there are people who are, surviving on that payment or that service. And when it is turned off or it delays, it causes horror, to those people. So when we are looking at the Ombudsman Conference, our tendency is always to the speed at which we will respond. Why? Because it is affecting the individual lives. So the time is of essence. The longer it takes, the more the pain that it is adding to an already inflicted person. Okay, so we try to rush through so that we can get a resolution quickly, if there is a possibility. But at times it requires a lengthy exercise. We need to go in and dig down and check a few things. So, but in most cases, we try to respond. Our responses normally, we try within our capacity to respond as swiftly as possible.
Definitely, and that is good. And so I call upon every private practitioner to ensure that the same system is followed in terms of an ombudsman, so that people who have complaints have where to run to and who to turn to. And just to stress that point, what are the benefits of having an ombudsman?
The benefits, one is that we empower the citizens. To know what they expect. And that's one of the, I think, the key aims of coming and being hosted on this wonderful TV is to create awareness, is to educate the people the importance of this function, and then through that, the citizenry or members of the public, they become aware that they should not be sitting on what can actually be raised as a matter that can be intervened into, and they get a service. Because when they do not raise, complain, or mention what they are grieved about, it may move on silently without being detected. And then two is to improve the quality of the services. Because when people are empowered, they know what they expect, and they are demanding for it. Then there is some bit of pressure on the other side that you can't give anything you choose, but you have to give what is due. Okay. Then through this mandate, we're also bringing services nearer to the people. We're trying to say, look, this institution is there for you. Okay. What if you are suffering under those areas which we have itemized above? Raise them, just bring them up so that we can look into them. And in general terms, you will find that there is efficiency. The way business is conducted in public offices there will always be some whipping effect, because people will not just be sitting and just without being careful that what they are doing is actually being brought under check, it's being examined, it's being monitored, and therefore that vibrancy, brings it affects the productivity of the public service, but that productivity now affects those who are expecting the services on the other side. And when there is good governance, in overall terms, when things are done properly, me and you benefit, but also people outside there, they are stakeholders, they do benefit. Okay, and then lastly, it undercuts the potential for corruption, because when corruption is minimized, is brought to a bare minimum, then it means whatever it has been stealing away becomes a benefit. Because what is being stolen away is actually what is meant to be enjoyed by some group of people. Okay, it's because you are being deprived, but But when we invade the areas where corruption is ripe and is likely to take place, and it becomes high risk to do that, then that means we will be getting what is due from the public service or from the government.
Definitely. And when it comes to fighting for the rights of citizens, there is an avenue called the Ombudsman complaint. I would like you to alert us as members of the public. What exactly is that?
The Ombudsman complaint, like I hinted, Bruno, is that expression. You express your dissatisfaction from what you have seen, from what you have received, and that you can express it in various forms. One, you may pick a phone and call. You may scribble it down. You may write it down. You may send an email, those who have the facilities. But the essence is that you don't remain quiet about it. You shouldn't be silent. You express it. And what are you expressing? You have not received what is due to you from the public office. You have seen also, you may actually be, there's what, even at times where people can report about what necessarily is not affecting them in their individual capacities, because the members of the public, they are more and spread out. They are in different locations by far than actually the Inspectorate of Government. And what they see, we can't see. But what they see when they bring it forward, then we know. So by reporting, it may not be like you lack your salary has delayed because you may not be salaried. But as a member of the public, you may say, no, what about this that I have noted here? You know, how come this center is not working? How come this building, which was commissioned the other day, has developed cracks? Now it's you who was there. But then as you raise a finger, then that becomes a starting point. But it may necessarily not be something that is directly going to benefit you. Yeah. So there's that other responsibility that we appeal to the members of the public to take seriously about.
So now that we know that this avenue is in existence, how does a member of the public report any injustice that has been made administration-wise? Where do we go, and how do we make that? How do we report that injustice?
Okay, thank you, Bruno. I will answer it in two ways. One, you know, the administrative centers of government, they are spread out. For example, we have, you know, districts. There are quite several now, and at every district there is an officer called the head of administration. It could be a town clerk. It could be a chief administrative officer. In other offices, in ministries and government and other agencies, still there are heads. They could be EDs, executive directors. They could be managing director. It could be chief executive officer, and the rest and the rest. Those are the first centers. You can call them the first line of resort. The issue is, what is it that you are grieved about in that area? Why don't you write? Why don't you complain there first? If it is at the local government, first send in your petition. I'll give you an example. We have instances where people, when they have been aggrieved in a recruitment process that is being done in Changeojo, for example, they want to bring a complaint to the regional office or even to the head office here. But then the issue is, you have a CAO, but it would actually be cheaper and faster. First express that, lodge it in there, okay? So that by the time you come, you have said, I've tried and failed. You may have your own reservations of not going to that center because possibly you are not confident. So that is one line. And we are telling the public that, look, members of the public, first use those centers first, because they are faster, they are cheaper, they are convenient, they are nearer to you. But then their office of the Inspector General of Government or the Inspectorate of Government is spread out also in 16 branches. And they are We have one in Lila, we have one in Moyo, Moroto, we have Bale, we have Tororo, we have even Kampala regional office, which is it's the other side of town. We have Mbarara, we have Kabare, we have Fort Portal, we have, there are 16. Now the reason, of course, they are spread out is to bring services nearer to the people who are resident in those geographical areas. But also the head office, which is at Jubilee Insurance, is also always open. So they can send in written, walk-in, send in mail. They can even use the social media platforms where they can, and these offices are available for them from 8 up to 5, or even slightly after 5. So they can send in, they can walk in, they can write, okay? They can even make telephone calls in those offices, okay? Those who survey on Google, they can actually even pick those addresses very quickly. Those telephone numbers, you call. Somebody should be at the back of the other line and receive your complaint. And when you have sent it in, you also, it's important to make a follow-up. Don't just send it in. You should make a follow-up, because that's part of accountability, that you may get the results. You ask, how far has my complaint gone? Because our practice is to give a reference number, okay? So just have that on the ticket to help you, that when you come, it's like, okay, this is the reference number of the matter I brought, and I'm checking the extent to which it has gone. Any action, okay? So you can see that is the other initiative which is coming from our members of the public, so that they can also be assertive to ask some of those questions, with a view that they demand from us that we respond to what they have sent in. It just doesn't become like you are stopping at reporting. Yeah.
Take us through, now that the report has been made, take us through the process of investigations, of investigating the matter, especially when it pertains to the safety of the person who has reported, because there might be people out there who want to report, but they are afraid that they might find out that it's them, and then they'll either lose their job or something worse may happen to them.
Okay. Thank you, Bruno. You are at liberty to write a complaint and you don't sign it off. If you're a person out there and you have those fears, those kinds of fears, you can actually do that. It will not be repaired or rejected just because it's not signed. But the issue is the content. What are you reporting about? And for us, we are not looking at who is complaining. We're actually looking at what, mainly. But there are those who are bold and says, look, this is about me. Because if it's your pension, Bruno, we would want also to link it with you. Because if you say I'm not paid, who are you? Because if we are going to make a track to trade it, we need to know Bruno so-and-so who worked, whose number is this, who is supposed to get a pension, has missed on these months. So definitely, there when you hide identity, it works against you. Okay? So the categories, they vary. But there is an option. There is an option to cite your name or your particulars, and would want to correspond with you. So how will we correspond with you when your telephone is not provided, or the contact, when your box number is not there? We want at times to seek clarification, because you have come as a stakeholder too. There is information you may not summarize, but as we scan through, we would want extras. We want you to give us a little more information. So how do we reach you? And when now there is a provision of address, that becomes easier, because then you are giving broader clues for us that we can hasten our intervention. Yeah. But when everything has come in, then we begin our processes. We do register the complaint, and we start conducting, evaluation. And our evaluation may necessitate that we conduct a full inquiry or investigate. It may actually be like informally we may make a phone call. But like I said, some of the things they are not complicated. And by calling the responsible officer, a matter can actually be resolved instantly. Okay? At times, people, when they complain, they are not aware that this is not it's not a big matter at all. You know, maybe there was a hitch and there was a breakdown of communication. For example, when funds are not available to pay for certain, for example, bills, and then the one who's supposed to receive is not aware, he may say, you know, they have diverted my money. But then you actually realize that, yeah, there was an abrupt intervention or some bit of a challenge in the flow of finances, and it may, when it is resolved, you know, the flow starts up again. And you find that information gap is what causes somebody to be disappointed. But then when you tell him, you say, oh, how, he says, no, they have rectified the system. They were cleaning up maybe the payroll. Wait, they are about to, you know, they are doing something which is meant to make the system more efficient. And then it is back on air. It's back on air, and then people begin to get their services. But at times we have to go in and check the facts, ask people, get explanation, put things on record, evidence, then file a report, and then at the end of it, the decision is made as to what is the punishment, or what is the intervention, or what is the recommendation. Should we issue a warning? Should we ask cancellation of the process? Should we advise this person to come and check over you? Should you issue an apology because what you did was ethically not right? Okay.
We are talking about the function of the Ombudsman when it comes to the Inspectorate of Government. And once again, my host for today is Mr. Kareebi Justus, who is the Acting Director Ombudsman when it comes to the Office of the Inspectorate of Government. And before the break, we were talking about some of the measures against officials, for instance, who are found to to practice maladministration. So something that you mentioned is, for instance, the issuance of warnings. But what other measures are in place and penalties or punishments are in place?
Okay, thank you, Bruno. The measures are determined largely by the findings and the nature of the complaint. One of them, like you've said, we may actually issue a reprimand for somebody who has been found culpable of a matter of maladministration. We may refer. We may at times find that it is better resolved. This matter can be resolved better by another institution. Okay. Because some of these institutions, they already have an inability mechanism of dealing with the errant officers, or even some of these areas which are complained about. Okay, so we will find that it is cost effective and faster if you send it to that institution, because we already know they are in better, they are able to handle these complaints. Almost that's what they do. Then at times we recommend that there should be modification. If a process we find is no longer matching with the tides of the time, we do recommend that there should be modifications. There should be reforms, because if those reforms are not done, then that process is going to be problematic. It will continue. You know, it's like a pothole which is on the road. If it's not sealed, every other time it will always be, you know, bringing that inconvenience. And at times we present our elaborate findings for implementation by the organizations where the officer who has been incriminated in these practices is attached. And those recommendations some of them do include, not limited to, it could be, for example, issue a warning, stern warning. It could be even demotion, okay? It could be cancellation, you know? can be cancellation of the whole process, because where somebody has entered into an organization using forged academic documents, there is no reason why that person, even if he holds an instrument of appointment, should stay around. You see, because that's criminal. So, and then at times we may even go to the level where we're saying, no, the regulations in place need to be changed, but also look at how you are going to affect also the laws. So that takes us now to the another, because the laws can only be reformed through Parliament. So we have to make a case, but it may come as a result of what we have examined in the processes that we have looked at, and it says, no, this is now stale. It can no longer fit in the current trend of things, and therefore we need to change this. We need to upgrade this so that it becomes more applicable, and it makes the service delivery system smoother and achievable. So in a nutshell, those are some of the ways we end up with our resolutions, and at times there is nothing. We find actually what they have reported, it lacks merit. So
I know for many they are waiting to hear the word imprisonment. I don't know, and at what place maybe police may be involved if it's a serious matter of a serious case of maladministration.
Yeah, when it comes to like instances I mentioned, when somebody is being found to have impersonated or used documents which are not his or hers, now that becomes a criminal angle. And it's when it is urgent, when the case is urgent, there is a penalty, a stiff penalty for that. And the culprit may actually end up in prison, or even end up in being fined. So, but by and large, under the ombudsman function, we are looking at processes, administrative matters, and rarely we get there. Because it's person to person behavior, conduct, failure to do what is right. So it oscillates around that, and we're always saying, no, you do things right, do things according to the rules that are in place. We insist, because one of under the ombudsman function is to, the strict adherence to the rule of law. The word strict, because if we are lax about the adherence, then one does it, another one does not do it. But we are saying, keep it there. Do it as it is supposed to be, the way it is in font, the way it is in writing. Why don't you follow it in the blueprint which is there? Okay? So we go in when there is laxity, and we go in when people are trying to introduce other rules of the SAMP according to their preferences. It says we go back to the board and stick to the rules. So when we find there is deviation, that's when then we end up saying this person is not fit to be around. This person, I think, is incompetent. This one has to be moved. This has to drop off. This one you have to change. This we have to institute, like that. But it all depends on what our findings speak to us about.
All right, thank you so much for taking us through that. And then we have received questions from you, our viewers, and we are going to get through them, and I'm sure our guests will respond to them sufficiently. I will start with Mukasa Jethran, and he asks, thank you so much, actually says, thank you so much for this important discussion. My question is there a platform of inquiry in your office, Mr. Kareebi? If yes, please share it with us.
The platform.
And just to correct our dear viewer, it's Mr. Kareebi, not Kareebi. Just a correction there. Okay. So I think the platform is for reporting a complaint. A complaint.
Yes, I respond right away that we have an email. We have an email so far. We are moving towards where we are going to have the social platforms to be in place. But for now, we have an email and an address is available for your usage. That is pr@igg.go.ug. If you pick that, and then you are able to send an email by raising a grievance, we'll be able to pick that. We'll be able to pick that. But then also check on our website, igg.go.ig. Yeah, one, there is quite a bit of information, but two, there is also, you are able to navigate and see where do you, for example, slot in and send in a complaint. But like I said, the processes are in advanced stages to have that platform and then bring it to the public so that they can actually tap into it and they share the information with it. Because what I have as a platform, it's on my WhatsApp, and that's a personal thing.
Yes, definitely.
I wouldn't want to use it.
Definitely. And then Josh Atwene here says, hello Family TV, my question is, what types of problems does the ombudsman handle and how? So I think this is someone who might have just joined the conversation.
Maybe came in a bit late, sorry. The kind of problems, in a nutshell, we said these are the issues that to do with the individual. The individual that about the individual rights of to do with you have not been paid what is due to you. You go to a center, you are not being attended to as a patient. You go to a school, there is no services from the school administration. You go to a public office, somebody who is supposed to serve you is not there. You go to lands, you need your certificate issued. You're almost moving there continuously and endlessly. Okay, now that's already, you can see there is a problem. So for what you fail to get as expected of a service from a public service, you raise it. But it can also be when you are owed something, you're owed a payment or a pension, from government, you can also raise it. It can be the land where government is taking it up for project purposes, but then you are supposed to be compensated. That can raise. It can be that you are being victimized in your workplace. But remember, this is to do with public officers. You are being victimized. And victimization is broad. It could be, either somebody is using abusive language, somebody is trying to undercut you, he does not appreciate your input, somebody is refusing to appraise you properly and transparently. You are generally mistreated at a workplace. Please don't be quiet about that. Yes, don't be quiet about that. That you can bring it to our attention, and we should be able to look into it.
Definitely. And then for someone who I think also just joined the conversation, that's Kemirimbe Claire from Chanja, says, for matters of security and confidentiality, do I need to disclose my name if I want to disclose a complaint with your office?
I already said that, no. If you want to keep your name out, you can. But when it becomes that it's you who is supposed to be the beneficiary of our intervention, it will be wise to disclose, because lest you will have actually you have impaired us from going far, because we will almost be chasing the wind, since we can't connect with the one who is actually claiming whatever is not yet settled. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And unfortunately, time always catches up with us. But would you like to give us your final remark, especially something you'd like us to take away when it comes to the office and the mandate of the ombudsman?
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, viewers, and even for those who have sent in their queries. I'll end on this note. There is a small passage in the Bible which. When Moses was sent on a mission, and he was a bit confused. He was saying, "Would they believe me?" And God told him, He says, "Yeah, I want you to check with what you have in your hand. You have a staff, okay? You use that staff." So the people out there, I think, let's not be fearful. What do you have? You can speak, you can write, you can send that email. There's what you can contribute in removing these elements of maladministration and administrative injustice. So don't be silent. and don't turn away and look the other side, because we may never know, since we cannot be everywhere. But come on board, and when you bring your matter, like I said, insist that you need to be served, either with our office or even with the offices where you had, whether it is at police, insist, and don't rush in trying to be in acts of compromise, because then you become like an accomplice. So let's undercut the tendency of trying to facilitate what is already provided for. Our services are free at all the branches, completely free. And if there is anyone out there who has been charged, don't hesitate, still raise an alarm about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to Issues at Hand, and thank you, our dear viewers, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. Now, furthermore, to quote more scripture, the Bible says, "Be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication make your requests known to God." So you can see the importance of making your petitions known, and you can make your petitions known to God. And for issues of maladministration, you can make your petitions known to the office of the Ombudsman under the Inspectorate of Government. So it's very important that we do that. Thank you for joining us on Issues at Hand once again, and we shall see you tomorrow. For now, ciao.